Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stacy. This is the Tuesday show. We are broadcasting, like I said earlier, from the bucket list in Bondi Beach. I have a lovely guest in today. His name is Jonathan Leeming, and he is going to be explaining how he managed to step outside his comfort zone, and let him explain a little bit more about it. But he basically took charge of his life and created something pretty damn cool. So we're going to be finding out how he pushed himself to do that. And hopefully for you, because it is Tuesday, and this is the Tuesday show, today you might get inspired to make a similar move for yourself. That is the whole point of having this lovely man here. He's also a burner. He's done a lot of work on himself, and I'm sure he's helped a lot of people around him. So let's welcome Mr. Jonathan Leeming. I don't normally do this.
No pressure.
Why not, huh?
Wow, no pressure. So
yes.
Now I have
Good
to...
morning. How's your day been?
Beautiful. I mean...
You were saying you don't get down to the beach much?
No. Standing here looking out over the ocean with beautiful sunshine, I wonder why I don't live here.
Yeah.
I live in the middle of the city. Always have done since I moved to Sydney from the UK
Is that right?
7.5 years ago. And I wonder why I don't live by the beach.
Well, I might have a place that you can stay for a little while to give it a trial. That could be an interesting little experiment, couldn't it?
All right, side deal. Good. Okay.
You know what? Knowing you, what have we known you for about 2 years now? Something along those lines?
Yeah.
Pretty close to that. I've gotten to know a few things about you. I think you would fit in down here, and you would find a very good community that would really would gel well with you, I think.
Well, every time I reconnect with one of the Bondi crowd, I don't want to call them that because that sounds like a label.
The crew, bro.
Yeah. I mean,
the
you're the tribe. That's the word I was thinking of. But I don't want to put off any of your listeners who think that's a bit quirky and odd. But yeah, anytime I meet kind of your Bondi tribe, and I reconnected with one of your dear friends, Jay, at a random event a few weeks ago, I just think there's a beautiful energy and a kind of soulfulness about some of the people that I know that live here. And I don't know if that's being refreshed by the ocean every day or something about it, but living in the city, it's just starting to get to me a bit. I think.
Mate, I tell you what. You know what I think it is? Because you've already mentioned a few people as since you've been here. The people that you've mentioned don't have full-time jobs.
I know.
Just maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know if it necessarily has. But they're kind of free. They're not necessarily millionaires or anything, but they've put themselves in a position where they can travel if they want, they can work if they want, and they can also, they can go out and make a decent chunk of money in one big hit if they need to.
And that's a really key point because one of the reasons I think you wanted to get me in to talk to you today is because I made a big career change last year, and one of the most significant aspects of my life now is my job. Which we'll come and talk about. But so the idea of leaving that at any stage to pursue a kind of a freelance career is a bit an odd sort of idea because Absolutely. My job is such a huge part of my identity now because as you know I now work for a not-for-profit. So
yeah. Well, the way I see career change like that is it's kind of like when you're building a let's say if you've got Lego or whatever it might be. Basically, I think, it's great that you've switched to what you're doing, and if you did this for a couple of years and then decided to be a freelancer with your previous career stuff, do you mind talking about what you used to do?
Sure, yeah, for sure. So I spent the best part of 13, 14 years working in media on the commercial side, so to put it really simply, basically flogging advertising, but there's a bit more to it than that. But
so
essentially,
sales, marketing,
sales,
big corporations, big contracts.
Yeah, so in the UK, I worked for a huge company called EMAP, which then got bought out by Bauer, which exists here as well. And basically, I left that about 8 years ago because I'd had enough of London, the rat race, the soullessness of it, if you like. And I took the advice of a life coach, actually, that I was seeing at the time, who suggested that he thought I would benefit hugely from just giving away all my stuff and going backpacking around the world, experiencing different cultures and seeing where I ended up. Sound familiar?
I think I know other people that should probably do something similar.
Yeah, for sure. I think I met one today. But the short version is, the universe has a really weird way of working. And at the risk of sounding a bit woo, but I will at several times during this conversation.
Please do, mate. Woo it up.
I believe that the universe has kind of machinated its way to having me here in Australia for various reasons.
Cool.
So, because I happened to mention casually to a dear friend of mine who lives in LA, who randomly I met 15 years ago on a plane to Ibiza, and we became dear friends. I mentioned to him that I was coming to New Zealand. So, okay, bit of a side story. My grandmother's Norwegian, and I've spent lots of time in Norway. It's one of the most beautiful countries on earth.
It is.
And people said to me, New Zealand, South Island particularly, is very similar to Norway in its geography.
I agree.
Mountains,
Seen both. I
glaciers, lakes, fields. So I wanted to go to New Zealand, and then my plan was Asia, because there's something about Asia, the kind of the Cambodias, the Vietnams, the Bhutans, the Laos, the Myanmars that really appealed to me. So my plan was New Zealand, maybe Barrier Reef, and then Asia. I happened to mention to this dear friend of mine who lives in LA, and he's also a freelance dude. He's got an amazing life, lives in the Hollywood Hills. I mentioned to him that I was going to New Zealand on this trip, and he said, well, your flight will stop in LA, so why don't you come spend some time? I said, okay, sure. How long shall I spend? He said, spend the summer. So next thing, I've got this invitation to go and spend, the best part of 4 months in LA, in the Hollywood Hills.
Summer. Yeah, okay.
So I thought, you know what? I'm a free agent for the first time in my life. I'm not working. I've got some money. Actually, all right, here's another side note. The money thing, when the life coach said, do this thing, I hadn't got any money, and I wasn't earning a huge amount, living in London. It's expensive. So I said to him, I've got no way of saving the money for this trip. What do I do? And he said, have you heard of The Secret? So The Secret, for those of your listeners who don't know, it's all about the law of attraction, right? Which was a phrase first coined by the father of personal development, Napoleon Hill, back in the 1920s and 30s. The law of attraction, now often referred to as The Secret because of the famous book by Rhonda Byrne. But you've also got the Esther and Jerry Hicks, Abraham Hicks, that whole law of attraction piece. And so basically, my life coach at the time, so this is 2009, said, without being too weird, if you just plan to make it happen, and you tell everyone, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your boss that in 9 months' time, which is the time scale I had, you're going to leave for these reasons. Buy guidebooks, draw lists, write itineraries, have photos, maps on your wall, buy a backpack. Make it a reality that you're going to do this. Tell the universe you're going to do this, and the money will come. So again, my next bit of woo-ness, but basically I had an idea in my head as to the money that I needed to have to do this trip, and sure enough, over that 9 months, that exact amount of money came to me from 3 different sources that I didn't even know existed, right?
So did you create it, or are you just saying that you were just like walking home one day and there it was?
So essentially, I got one chunk was I got a bonus from work I didn't even know I was eligible for. My boss just one day over a glass of wine said, "Oh, look, I put us in for this thing because I thought we should, and we've got it." Okay, thanks. We're still in touch, by the way. This boss of mine, we had drinks in a wine bar in London when I went back at Christmas. He's fabulous. He was called the great man in media circles in London, and he really was. And then the next thing is my mum. She had a little property in Cape Town in South Africa, which she had to sell for financial reasons. So she gave me a little bit of money and said, "Look, Jonathan, I'm really sorry. That was supposed to be your inheritance, and so here's a little bit of money." And then my grandfather, who sadly now passed away, aged 99 a few years ago, he said, "Look, you might as well have a little bit of money while I'm still alive so I can hear some of your stories." Brilliant, right? So I had this money come to me. So next thing, I'm going to go to LA to see my friend, and then his dad got ill, and he had to go back to Minnesota to look after his dad. He was terminally ill, and so he left me in charge of his Hollywood Hills pad with his convertible, and his friends, and to have pool parties with. And so I used LA as a base to do 2 big North American road trips. I literally, I did, one of the trips was, I think it was 3,000 miles in his car with his dogs, on my own with his dogs, across, 9 states, I think. It was extraordinary. So I did this these road trips. I also made a base to go down to Mexico and Brazil and Fiji and a whole bunch of stuff, right? So by the time I came to New Zealand and did 2 months traveling around New Zealand and then popped in on Australia, again, I wasn't planning to, but my mum had visited Sydney and Melbourne, and I thought, well, I'm almost next door in New Zealand, so it would be churlish of me not to come and see her.
Sure.
So I popped in on Melbourne, didn't really like it because it was too busy after New Zealand. Came to Sydney, had the same reaction, but then when Mum left, realised I had no money left, and lo and behold, the option was get a job in a bar, work for 6 months and go home, or get a job back in media, which is a career I could get a business sponsorship on, and maybe stay. And sure enough, that's what kept me here for the last, I've been here 7.5 years now.
7.5 years.
But the whole thing was I wasn't happy doing that job. I mean, look, I met some great people. I made some good contacts. I've had a lot of fun along the way. Media has a lot of perks and side benefits.
For 6 years.
I worked in media, so I started here in 2011, and I wound up last year. So that's 6 years, yeah.
So usually people hit the road like you did. The whole sell everything, live out of a backpack, travel the world, see what happens, they kind of do that. The common phrase is to find themselves.
Yeah.
It sounds to me as though you came back and you were still that same self, and you ended up back in media accidentally. And then, is it possible that you've only just found yourself, so to speak?
Well, there's the pressure, right? I really don't think I've found myself. I'm not setting myself on. I'm not setting myself up on a pedestal to say I've found myself, because I believe that people like you and say Jay have, because you know exactly what it is you're doing and you're on purpose every single day. I believe I've found a major component of myself, which is
nice.
a job that gives me meaning and fulfillment and purpose.
Sure.
And so again, getting kind of personal, but I don't mind sharing this at all. You know, I've had a bit of help over the years. You know, I've seen counsellors and therapists and things because, you know, I think just like you go see a personal trainer or a fitness coach, you know, you try and sort out your physique. You know, I think there shouldn't be any stigma attached to people looking to sort out their mental and emotional state as well. And so I've done a bit of that over the years. And there was a therapist I was seeing last year who led me to the belief that maybe a lot of the activities I've done over the years, a lot of the relationships I've been in, the job titles I've sought out, the hobbies, the passions, the things I've done have been ways in which I've been trying to seek validation of myself, because maybe there was something missing, you know. And I think that comes down to the fact that I felt I was doing a job that really wasn't helping anyone in the world. And that was a really key part, which when you and I first met, which was on one of your courses, a life design workshop, one of I think the key thing that came out of that, after all the mind mapping and vision boarding that we did, was I said, I want to help people, I don't know how.
Yeah.
And I think because I had this big absence inside of me, nothing was being fulfilled, so I was seeking external validation. And now that I've got this job that does give me that a lot of fulfillment, in a weird way, the juxtaposition is it's made me kind of lazy, because outside of work, I'm like, well, I've done my good deed for the day, and so now I'll just sit on the couch and watch Netflix.
Yeah, man. No, actually, it's funny. I had dinner with someone just last week who said the same thing. You may know her. Her name's Naomi. Have you met Naomi?
Possibly.
She did a very similar sort of strict regime of personal development for easy 6 years, maybe more, 7 or 8 years. And now she's working in a something that looks after kids. And she's no longer concerned about doing the personal development and all that sort of stuff. It's really interesting. So and so you were seeking, the coach or whoever was pointing out that perhaps you were seeking validation through all these external studies. Is that what you're saying? Or through
lots of stuff I was doing. You know, so whether it's, hey, I'm in a relationship with this person, now I'm the boyfriend of X. Hey, I've got this job title, therefore that becomes me. If someone says, hey, tell me about yourself, what's your life story? Hey, I'm this job title. But also, the courses, I've done so many courses over the years, and to name check our mutual friend Jay again, he mentioned to me when we caught up a few weeks ago that perhaps a lot of these courses that I've been doing have been very head focused, and I'm very much in my head a lot of the time, and one of my challenges is trying to get out of my head, and that maybe I need to be more heart focused, body focused, like Jay does.
Sure.
Body work, kahuna massage and body work. And so, but a lot of the stuff I've done is very intellectual. It's kind of giving me, I'm writing pages of notes, dozens of pages of notes. And is that doing me any good? I think certainly some of the things I've done over the years have, for sure. But some of them have just been almost like an exercise in...
Work for work's sake? Staying busy?
I had another W word in mind, which I won't say on the radio. But it was a little bit...
Egotistical. That
No,
doesn't
it's
start
just,
with W, but...
It was almost...
You can say wanky if that's...
Yeah. I feel like there's a little bit... Like, I've always wanted to improve myself, but I think some of these courses are amazing and genuine and have the right soul and heart behind them, but some of them are just money-making enterprises. And some of the ones that you and I have done are... Legit, and some are maybe less legit. And I think you can really tell, when you've got courses that go global and try and sell... you onto buying the next course and promoting it to your friends, there's something inauthentic about that. And then you've got courses that we've done as well, which are the opposite of that. It's like, let's get a small group together, one person traveling the world teaching it, and really getting you to tap into your deep soulfulness.
So it sounds to me like you almost view all these personal development achievements as Scouts badges.
That's a really, really good way of thinking about it, which I haven't thought of until now. Yeah, I'd go with that.
So maybe be cool amongst your crowd, right? I've done that. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, I maybe had a realization.
But the past,
of that.
There's I can't think of one that you mentioned that's actually not good. And I want to raise the point that if you haven't done these things, you don't know which one's going to totally blow your mind and change your life.
That's
and
100%
I do
true.
recommend you get out there and do it. So we're talking about something that used to be called the ISA Experience. It's now called the Wake Up Weekend. There's another one called, of course, Landmark Forum. A lot of people have heard of that. It's a very good course. There's people who get evangelical about all sorts of things, and
that's caused...
Landmark does have a few evangelical people who go around screaming about it being the best thing on earth. It is a very good course. Vipassana meditation. Did you say Tony Robbins and John DeMartini?
I've never done Tony
things?
Robbins because, to be honest, I couldn't really afford it or justify it. But John DeMartini, I haven't. But I've got a really actually an amazing coach who, again, I think is very, very authentic, and he's got a whole range of skills. His name's Peter Shaw. He runs a company called Scary and Exciting, based up on the Central Coast at the moment. He's done a few things with John DeMartini, but the Scary and Exciting program I did a few years ago actually included a week-long residential neuro-linguistic programming (NLP) course, a week-long residential public speaking workshop, another week-long stand-up comedy workshop. When I say week, either between 4 and 7 days. And the stand-up comedy, public speaking. One was a skydiving and life planning workshop. That's kind of cool. So I've done a lot of solo skydiving in the past, so it's not something that scares me, but it gives me a lot of adrenaline, But most people are somewhere between terrified and or adrenaline-filled with skydiving. And his whole thing with this is using NLP techniques to self-program so you have no fear and no adrenaline. You literally bring that. You give a 1 out of 10.
You can jump out of a plane without freaking.
You give a 1 out of 10 scale, right? On day one of how scared, how fearful you are, and how much adrenaline you've got about the skydive the next day. And then over that day, you work on these self-programming techniques to reduce that number to 0. And the very next day you wake up, you do a very brief bit of reminder of the previous day's work. You drive down for a couple of hours. You then jump out of a plane in tandem with this dude or woman, the teacher, the instructor. And basically when you land, you go, that was very pleasant, thank you. And it literally, and then you go back and you sit for the next day or two working on, if you can use self-programming to get all the fear and adrenaline out of skydiving, then you can use the same techniques to program your life.
Well, I'll tell you, man, like I did, I was the MC for the Circus of Ideas a few weeks back, and I love doing it. Like I absolutely, once I'm on stage, once I've said the first 20-odd words, I'm so in the zone, I own it, and it's just fun. But I tell you, dude, the days leading up to that, oh man, I made it such a drama, and it didn't need to be. So yeah, I can really see the benefit in that. And I tell you, next time I'm queued up to do the Circus of Ideas, it's probably going to be a much bigger audience. I'm not going to get sucked into that. No, I've got to be so much more conscious because I took myself on a ridiculous ride, man. It was stupid, like sleepless and freaking out and everything.
And isn't that the point, right? That we used. Your language is fabulous. I've always loved it. When you said I took myself on a ridiculous ride. I mean, Bill Hicks is, life's just a ride, right? But,
yeah, totally.
But we do often take ourselves on this mental nonsense journey, which has no purpose. And
it's totally optional.
Yeah, and I think Vipassana, you've mentioned that a couple of times, it's such an impact. So for anyone that hasn't heard of Vipassana, it's basically a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And the one here closer to Sydney is up in the Blue Mountains in Blackheath. Yeah. And it's just, you're completely removed from anything. So there's no reading materials, writing materials, listening materials, viewing materials allowed. You're not allowed, obviously, any devices, and you can't speak to or make eye contact with anyone, right? And people go, what the hell, that's ridiculous.
And no reading and no writing.
Yeah, so materials.
And no masturbating.
No masturbating.
And no killing anything. So you can't kill a mosquito.
Yep. And also no exercise. The only exercise you can do is walking in the forest. You can't
if you're sitting there thinking, what the hell would I want to do that for? If it's of interest, it's donation based. Well, it used to be. It probably still is. It's all around the world. These guys have been doing it for probably 100 years. I actually have no idea. But it's all over the world. I was broke at the time I did it. I gave them $100.
Yep. It was a technique of meditation.
For 10 days, including accommodation and food.
Yep. It was beautiful, vegetarian, healthy, amazing food. I came out of that. My digestive system's never felt healthier than after that. But the technique of meditation has its roots in India with the Buddhist philosophy about 2,500 years ago. But it's not, I would stress, it's not a religious thing at all. No. It got rediscovered by a meditation master about 60-odd years ago, I think, and brought over to the West with the idea that this is something the world can benefit from.
Medicine for the Western society. One of the best things I ever did. Absolutely one of the best things I ever did. I think, and we were talking before about how, for me, it taught me to be aware of what I was thinking. and that, I don't know if you can recognize the magnitude of that lesson, but to be aware of what I'm thinking, in theory, that should also suggest that I'm aware of the words that are coming out of my mouth. I'm aware of what I'm thinking about myself, or I'm aware of if my thoughts drift into a negative paradigm. And there's nothing more important in the whole existence of life, because everything that I do is happening in my head. Everything that I see and hear and experience are all going on in my mind. And if I can practice monitoring my thoughts, which is what definitely comes from 10 days of sitting there being basically thinking and being conscious of my thoughts, that enables me to, maybe if something would otherwise upset me, to be aware that that upset is starting to creep in, and to just look at it with a third person perspective and be like, hang on a minute, I don't want to go down that path, so I'm just going to go and think about ice cream. And that's worked for me. It's worked a treat. I don't really get too upset very often.
I think I would term what you're talking about being truly conscious.
Yeah.
And being truly conscious is something that so many of us in the world, I would propose, are not these days, because we're constantly bombarded with, advertising, distractions, fast food, reality TV, just junk for the...
Probably are on Potts Point, mate, not over here.
True, good point. But there are distractions everywhere, right? And so many of us, I think, are going through... Actually, my old squash coach, he's an amazing dude called Ollie. He's in his 70s, and yet he's still teaching, top-level squash. He trained with all the world champions a few years ago, well, quite a long time ago. He had this interesting philosophy, which I won't go into, but one of the things he said that derived from this philosophy was he felt that a vast majority of people who live in cities these days are just somnambulists, which is to say that they are walking asleep. You see people walking through Martin Place, and they're head down on their phone or on their headphones, and there's just no real consciousness going on.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about ways in which we can reclaim our consciousness and be more present in the moment, I think.
Mm-hmm. Those people make great consumers.
Yep.
They're great for the tax man, great for the big corporations.
And that's the reason I got out of advertising.
And you know what? They're also great as employees, in theory, because they really don't have much going on. So if you tell them to do something, they probably just do it.
But that's not cool. This is part of my rant. If you like,
it's the whole purpose of my company, bro. I just those people, like, let's be fair, they're not spending their entire day sitting there staring at their phone being zombies. They do have personalities. They do have things that they do well, and they do have something to offer and all those sorts of things. But I think even if it's 10% of their life is spent staring at a screen with zero benefits, like not even one, in fact, negatives.
Well,
like
so
10%. That's 10%. That's 10 years of your life. 10 years being sucked into a media machine that gives you zero back. In fact, takes from you.
But I would take that even further, right? I would say
phenomenal.
So let's say, and I won't mention where I used to work, but I used to work at one of the biggest media companies in the country, right? And they have some fabulous products, and they have some excellent people. And then they also have a lot of people who I would hear on a Monday morning saying, oh, God, it's Monday, how depressing. And on Wednesday, yay, happy hump day, nearly there. And on Friday, hooray, it's Friday, happy Friday, it's the weekend, thank God. They were basically living for the weekend. Yeah. A majority of the people I knew didn't want to be there and were just, clocking in and out in order to earn money to pay the bills.
So they can buy a bigger TV.
And so they were, so they can
watch their
more,
own ads bigger
and they were selling
and
advertising,
have more effect from a bigger TV screen.
Yeah. And yet, right, they were spending, I would say, 80% of their waking hours either in work or commuting to and from work, right? 80%. And this is what really made me just go, my head just exploded. I thought, I can't be part of this machine anymore, because there are so many people here who, let's imagine some of these super smart, passionate, intelligent people were doing something for the betterment of the world, humanity, the planet, animals, people, whatever, instead of just flogging advertising to make people buy things they don't need with money they don't have in order to keep up with the Joneses, figuratively speaking.
Correctamundo. You are not okay. Buy this product and you'll be great. That's the essence of pretty much all advertising out there. Look at the problem in your life. How terrible is it? If you buy this thing, you'll be popular and have a can of Coke on Bondi Beach with beautiful people.
Yeah, well, look at the Pepsi ads, right? They are literally just beautiful people holding a bottle, smiling, having a party.
I want to be one of them.
There's an amazing movie. It's not amazing, but it's an entertaining movie. It's called The Joneses. It's with David Duchovny and Demi Moore. And it's literally about a group of, it's about a supposed family. They're all beautiful, and they all have the car and the watch and the kitchen and the house. They have everything, essentially. and they move into this really wealthy, affluent suburb, and
Sure.
everyone wants to be like them and starts buying all the products that they have. And what it turns out is they are essentially marketing executives and salespeople who they're not actually a family at all. They're acting as though they're the perfect
Oh.
ideal family, and they're just placed into rich communities to make people buy certain products.
Wow.
And it's extraordinary. And you see the social dysfunction just grow, and then there's a death by suicide because someone can't keep up with it, and it all just falls apart. And it's really powerful because I think it's a thinly veiled, what do you call it? Representation.
It sounds like what people see on Facebook and on Instagram. They're like, oh, that's how it should be. That's, whether they're conscious of it or not. If they see this life on their social media, and that's what they consume, whether they like it or not, that's what they subconsciously perceive as either what should be happening or what they're missing, is both at the same time. This is how I should be. This is how I should be. This is how I should be.
Why is my
look, 4,000 likes, I should try to be like that, and so on and so on and so on. And then the consequence is, if somebody can't be like that, which nobody can because it's someone else, then they feel like they're not getting the likes, and it's like, just turn it off. Just get away.
Why is my life not like that person's? I want it to be more like that. Yeah.
Get a paintbrush, for God's sake, go for a walk on the beach, just turn it off. Anyway, look, let's put on a little tune, mate, in case there's some people out there that want to go make a cup of tea. I always think that's a good thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jonathan Leeming and Stacy in Henderson doing the Tuesday show here in Bondi. We are overlooking what looks to be, I don't know too much about surfing, but it looks like pretty epic surf today. So if you're out there still rugged up in your wintry doona, it is a beautiful day yet again, another sunny Tuesday. Head down to Bondi Beach, get some surf, grab yourself some fish and chips, bro. I'm just going to put on a tune. Maybe we'll talk about a little bit about Burning Man in a minute, huh?
For sure.
Yeah, we're going to inspire people to fire up, open up a bank account, get some cool pictures of those super hot babes dancing around in the dust. Get yourself over there. Back in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I hope you had a nice little dance around there. We put on a bit of music just to make sure you can keep your body a little bit up while you're using your brain here, because we are talking about some good stuff about how to improve your life, how to realign your values, how to realign who you are to get the future that you want, I suppose. And I'll get back to that one thing that I mentioned before, how you've switched to this job where you really are serving a purpose. You're very emotionally connected to what you're doing. I see it as like a building block, right? And it's a component that in 3 or 4 years or 5 years from now will be a fantastic component to add to your media experience, to add to all the sales, all the corporate stuff, all the, the experience you've had with big business. And then you add in this. Have you mentioned what it is yet? I'm not going to say it first.
No.
You want to say what it is? What are you doing now?
Sure. So, can I tell the little backstory?
Yeah,
I'm not sure how much I can say because it's a bit weird. But okay, essentially, I did this spiritual retreat, and we'll kind of leave it at that, where I was, and I'm not a religious person, but I would say I'm kind of spiritual. I feel like there's something greater than ourselves out there, and I was in the middle of the bush on this spiritual retreat, feeling very connected to something, and I was kind of saying, come on, what is it I'm supposed to be doing with my life?
Perfect question for a time like that. Very good.
And I felt like I got this real clear knowledge. It wasn't a voice in my head or anything kooky like that. It was this real clear knowledge, kind of, I feel like in my heart. I'm tapping my chest here, which was very much, if I was to paraphrase into Aussie, it would be like, cool your boots, chill out, stop straining against the leash, it'll come. And 2 weeks later, bearing in mind that underpinning all this was my desire to do something where I was helping other people and making a difference. Yep. 2 weeks later, I randomly sat next to a woman at an unrelated event. It was a communications masterclass, again, part of the whole personal development stuff that we all do. And it was a communications masterclass in the city, and I sat next to this lady who turned out to be the deputy CEO at a not-for-profit charity organisation called Suicide Prevention Australia, which is the peak body, so the national leadership organisation for the whole suicide prevention sector in Australia. And her best mate was sat next to her, who is a recruitment consultant. So, of course, we all get talking about transferable skills and my desire to move into the not-for-profit sector in some way. And the short version is, I said to the ladies, we had a nice chat afterwards, then they had to go off somewhere, and I said, can we keep in touch and maybe have a drink in a couple of weeks' time and talk more about this whole not-for-profit sector and transferable skills piece? And they said, yeah, sure. 2 weeks later, on her way to meet me for that drink, Deputy CEO Kim texts me to say, I'm on my way, and you won't believe it, we've just had approval for a brand new role at SPA, Suicide Prevention Australia, which could be perfect for you. And sure enough, it's head of corporate and community relations. It's all around developing corporate partnerships, looking at community fundraising, looking at all the ways we can bring revenue into the organisation in order to ensure the financial sustainability of the newly created National Suicide Prevention Research Fund.
Amazing. What a great job title. What a great role. So you're providing the bloodline, basically.
If you like, yeah. And
because that's a really nice use of your previous skills, you know, all the stuff that you learned in the last job, how you can apply it and serve your purpose at the same time.
Well, it makes me feel like all those years I spent in media, where some days I may have felt like I was wasting my life, I wasn't, because I was getting this amazing experience that led to me now being able to have this job where I know I'm adding value. And, you know, people tell me, they say, well, the experience you've got is perfect for this, and that's great, and it's delightful that you've made this move. And what's funny is I know at least 3 other people, personally, who have left media in the last 12 months to move into not-for-profit. And I feel like there is a lot of... It's a great transition. You know, media is something, I think it's quite a young person's industry. People have to keep in touch with keep up to date with the new technologies and all that kind of stuff, and be very much out and about, you know, socializing and drinking and buying clients lunches and things. And it's very much a young person's industry. And I think after a certain amount of experience, you can use those skills you've gleaned from that sector, and if you choose to, you can use them for the benefit of others.
That's amazing. And not only that, like in the future, like in a few years from now, you could be in a position where you're doing that same service for a variety of non-for-profits, and it could be a consulting role, or it could be an agency that has people like you that, you know, helps them to, you know, to pull in revenue, and that would be a huge purpose. You know, you could literally pick your favorite 3 charities and pimp them all, you know, and work for them, you know, 2 days a week or a day a week on each of them, and just, you know, manage their crew of people that are raising funds or something like that. See, that's how I see it, is like the progression. Where can this lead, and how, this is always the way I see things, how can I live on an island doing this from a laptop for at least $1,000 a day? And a role like that would be able to, that's a true possibility. If you steer yourself in that direction, now that you have this asset, now there was a great phrase for this, corporate collateral, I think it is, career collateral. So, you know, like your resume is now another chunk better, right? And it points you in a certain direction.
And I think that's a really, really interesting idea, and I totally expect it to come from you, because I know that's the idea of, you know, living on an island and having, you know, having the freedom. And I think being financially free is something I would love to be, and I don't foresee it anytime soon, because look, we live in Sydney, which is one of the most expensive cities on earth to live in, and, you know, work for a not-for-profit. You know, obviously,
your wish is my command.
But I had dinner with an old colleague a couple of months ago now, and she's roughly my age, late 30s, and she was saying by the time she's 45, she wants to be and is fully in line to be financially free. And I'm thinking, Jesus, that's extraordinary. How are you going to get there? Because I can't see that in my future.
Sure. Well, let's have a look at the definition of what you mean by that. What's your definition of financial freedom?
Well, not being tied to... It's a good one, isn't it? Not being able to define. I actually can't define that in one sentence.
See, and I just want to sit on that for a second, because people run around saying they want to be financially free, and they don't know what it is. It's like saying I want to be fit. Like, people have an expectation of what they mean by that. So financial freedom is just this loose term that I think most people, their version of it is what they see in some reality TV show. Oh, mansions and diamonds and TV cameras.
No, see, I don't need any of that stuff. I think
let's have a look at it. What do you mean then?
So... Okay, I'm looking at buying a property this year because my mother is very generously giving me some money for a deposit, but it's not, my budget is not going to allow me to buy anywhere in the suburbs that I'd ideally like to live, so I'm thinking, well, do I move further afield? Either way, whatever I end up doing, that will end up saddling me with a $500,000 mortgage, right? And that's not cool. Because talking to our mutual friend Jay the other weekend, and he was saying, really? You're going to be spending X amount per month for the next 30 years to pay off that debt, and you'll be paying the bank another 350 grand in interest over that time. Is that what you want? And no, that's not what I want. Ideally, you know, I want somewhere to live, and I don't want to be paying, you know, most of my net income for that place to live. So a financial freedom, I guess, would be having somewhere to live, so shelter taken care of, and enough money to pay for food and and the odd splurge, being able to go to see my family in the UK or go on a holiday skiing
to live
if
your
I
life,
want to live my
to
life
do what you want,
without having to, without being tied to worrying about my finances, worrying about bank balance, and having to have a job for the next 50 years. Even because whilst I'm passionate about what I want to do, what I'm doing, and I want to stay at SPA for years to come, the idea that I have to carry on earning that amount of money just to live, and I can't save any money, that's not cool,
Yeah.
That's not financial freedom. So the opposite of what I've got now is kind of an aspiration.
Everything but what I've got. That's my definition of financial freedom. Okay, good. Can I give you the explanation that I like?
Go.
In my, I have a financial freedom course. The definition that we use is when my fixed and variable expenses are offset by passive and semi-passive incomes. My fixed and variable expenses are offset by passive and semi-passive incomes.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah. See, the interesting, what that means is that my fixed expenses, right? We know that our rent and our electricity and our Opal card and even our groceries can be considered somewhat fixed. Well, maybe not our groceries, but our car insurance, our gym fees, if that's what we have, our Netflix, whatever it might be. You could, for most people that do the course, about 40% odd of their living costs are fixed. And they're totally predictable. And we can know straight away, let's say if someone's on $1,000 a week, they can know that 400 of it each week should be going directly out, right? So that takes care of 40%. You've got another 10% that I personally believe that people should have to spend, should have to blow on stuff. The reason I say that is because people are going to blow it anyway. So let's make a rule that it has to be blowed, and then to counteract that in a yin-yang sort of way, 10% that must be saved. So now we're up to 60%, 40% on fixed expenses, and another 20 on the what is typically called out there the savings to keep account and the play or the fun account. So that's 60%, and then you've got another 40%. So for a lot of people, 30% is around their variable costs. So that could be Ubers, that can be alcohol, that can be ciggies and food and dining out and dining out, those sorts of variables. So that generally adds up to another 30%, and then you've got 10% spare. And what I suggest for those people out there is to use that other 10%, 5% for a travel account, if that's the kind of person they are, and 5% for that other thing, such as a new car or a new phone or a new computer or whatever it is that they're saving up. So that's called a long-term savings for spending account. So now, once you've structured your finances into what I call folders, just like how we would treat our computer. We don't have all of our files sitting on the desktop, like that would be unmanageable. So what I like to do is to batch our living costs into these certain categories. Now, once you've done that, then you can seek to create passive incomes or offset those things. So, for example, if that one account, you're buying a car, you know that you put that car on Car Next Door or something for a few days a week, and that offsets the cost of the car. Or if you're renting a house, then obviously one of the things that I do is share housing. And if you set up, say, a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and you provide a really nice environment with good quality appliances and furniture, and a well-managed house with a curated audience, like actually picking people, not an audience, tenants, a community. And if you're actually creating a really nice living environment, then it's completely within your morals, I believe, to offset some of your rental costs. So you can halve your rent from, say, $300 or $400 a week down to $200 a week by providing a service. So you're chipping away at it piece by piece. Another thing you could do, you could have one little job, or you could rent out one thing. Or so, if you had like $100,000, instead of putting it into one property where you might make a little bit of income off the side, or you might have some tax offsets or something like that, and maybe in a few years you might have some capital gains if you pick the right property, but that's not always the case. With the $100,000, there's a whole stack of ways that you could buy a van, for example. You could go out and buy a nice Toyota Hiace and rent it to someone who does man and van. You put $20,000 in there, and it makes you $150 or $200 a week. That's not a huge income, but if your expenses are $1,000 and you have a couple of those things at $150 or $200 a week, before you know it, you have offset. So your fixed and variable expenses become offset by passive and semi-passive incomes. So with $100,000 capital, I believe that someone can offset their $1,000 living costs with just thinking about it, just having that different strategy. Because most people go out there and they think that to be wealthy, you need to buy property. Of course, property is a very good option if you know what you're doing, but there are many, many other ways. You know, and with your skill set, you could be a contractor. You could actually you could help small businesses. You could just be on the board of directors, and when they're making a big decision about their marketing, they could just call you, and you could maybe make $25 a month just to be available for 20 different companies. And there's $500 already.
I think you're giving me too much credit. I don't think I've got the...
But you see, you've got 13 years in the media industry, and somebody who's got their own small business, they might have 2 staff or something, they might be great at making tacos. Doesn't mean they know anything about marketing, bro. They have no idea. So to have somebody like you on call, people would pay $50 a month, whatever it might be. You know, so you could just like thinking, how can I offset? Well, I think the big problem with this so-called financial freedom thing that everybody wants is they think they need millions of dollars. They think they need big money, but they don't. First they need to know how much their life costs, and that's what most people have no idea. They have a vague thing in their mind that they add up when they're sitting on a bus or something. Yeah. But if they get really clear on how much their life costs, then offsetting it with these little incremental pieces, like multiple pieces. If there was a pie, they want 10 slices, 10 small slices.
I think that's a really, really good strategy, and I would encourage people that are interested to get in touch with you and do the financial freedom course, finance design, business design. I've done all 3 of your courses, and but it's been a while ago, so I should probably recap. But there's a book I'm reading at the moment which actually echoes. It's interesting. It really closely echoes that whole thing about putting your life finances into files or folders. I like the idea. It's a book called The Barefoot Investor. You probably read it, right? Yeah. And he's the same thing. He says, like, create all these different bank accounts and put different things in there and name them certain things. You've got daily expenses, you've got splurge, you've got fire extinguisher, you've got mojo, all the names. Yeah, so it's interesting, but I've only just started reading it. But it's funny thinking about the contracting thing, actually. I was walking home from the supper club at which I was with our mutual friend Jay the other day, and walking past a fabulous new rosé wine bar in Potts Point called Rosé Royale. It's on Kellett Street for anyone that's in the area. Check it out. It's the world's first rosé wine bar. Nice. And all the food there is rosé influenced or rosé themed. It's fabulous. And the French guy that runs that, Jerome, has done such a fabulous job. The decor, the design, the menu, everything. But he's not making money right now because it's new and obviously there's, it's getting the word out. So I was walking back from this supper club and I popped in for a last glass of wine. He got rid of his last customers, then joined me, and we spent the next, we spent till 4 a.m. chatting, drinking over wine, and doing a business plan for him.
Amazing.
He was asking my advice on various marketing strategies that he's having proposed to him, and I got all these sheets of paper and I'm writing all these kind of plans for him. Hopefully it helped, But that's just, I like helping people, Yeah.
Well, I'm sure your current job is sort of, taking enough of your time, 40 plus hours a week.
Yeah, emotional energy for sure. Yeah.
Emotional energy. Yeah. Well, maybe just take note of what you're doing and how you do it, and whenever the inspired moment hits you, man, like if you come home one night and you decide to go down to the grassy knoll here with your laptop, then just take some notes on how you do it. And who knows, you could create a landing page and just be like, hey guys, I like to work with companies who are doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not interested in just helping people sell crap. But if this is the kind of person you are, I'd like to see if I can help you, and just help a couple of people for free and see how it goes. If you love it, like there's no reason. See, if you know that, and I don't know your company at all, but it's quite common nowadays for people to stay in their job, but to change from being a full-time employee to being a contractor, right? And so if you could actually fulfill your KPIs as a contractor, A, your pay might go up. But B, it might enable you to do everything you need to do. Instead of being expected to be in the office all the time, you just sort of fulfill your task, and then you might have an hour a day to do other things. Anyway, look, whatever. We don't want to get into your career so much. But I just think it depends on the lifestyle you want. Maybe if you do just want to have a full-time job and a nice little house and a partner and a couple of kids, and that model is pretty well practiced and it works.
Can I scratch a line straight through the word kids? Because you know me, bro, there is no chance I want kids.
Oh, really? Wow.
So any young ladies out there who don't want kids, fascinated to meet you, because I don't see many of you around. I'm usually on date 1 or 2 when I say, all right, look, I just need to put it out there. I don't want to have kids. And then often there's this screeching halt, this mental kind of, and then kind of reverse,
Yeah. No, then they have to think, okay, do I just want to have fun with this guy for a couple of weeks, or what am I going to do next?
And that's fine, but at the end of the day, once I get to, I'm 37 in a couple of weeks, and so, I'd love to have a partner with whom to have adventures and do cool stuff, like go to Burning Man, which, we did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was awesome, right? Because I was there with one camp, you were there with another camp. We managed to meet up a couple of times. I know you were slightly envious of my living environment
Did we
there.
bump into each other, or did we couldn't plan to meet?
I came
You
to
must
find
have
you at
came
your
to see
camp,
us,
yeah. And then you came to see my camp, and you were like, "Wow, bro, you've got air conditioning. This is amazing."
Yeah, man, it was awesome. I was very jealous.
Yeah,
I'm back in Bang Bang this year by the looks of it.
Well, if I can, it sounds to me like your young lady wants to go and hasn't got a ticket yet. So
Definitely.
if I can sort out tickets, then
Are
it
you
may
going?
well be with my crew. I
Are
can't
you?
afford it. I would if I could, because it's directly after the National Suicide Prevention Conference, which will be a lot of work, and so I will need a
Sure,
break.
sure.
I would love to. I can't afford it. If suddenly I come into money, then I will put it out to my crew.
Interesting.
But that being said, so when you go to Burning Man, for anyone that hasn't been and wants to go, you kind of have to have, well, if you want to join one of the well-established camps, which I would suggest is a great way to go, you need to have a sponsor, someone who will vouch for you, someone who will make sure you pull your weight, you carry, you carry your burden.
Be accountable.
Be accountable,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, and my sponsor, funny enough, she was a young lady I met when I spent my 4 months living in LA in the Hollywood Hills all those years ago. And I developed this huge circle of friends there. And this young lady, we were going to go to Burning Man, this whole bunch of us, and then it ended up not happening that year. But this young lady ended up going every year thereafter and becoming a really core part of the organising crew
Was it
for.
Emma?
No, Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah S. And she became part of the organising crew for Camp Charlie, which, for those of you Bondi crew out there, no, it's not a drug reference. It's to do with Charlie the Unicorn, the YouTube
If anyone's
cartoon.
been to Burning Man, they should know Charlie the Unicorn by now.
It's a giant. So at Burning Man, you have art cars or mutant vehicles, which are literally trucks that have been, revamped and turned into these literally mutant vehicles. And Camp Charlie, so Charlie the Unicorn is a giant 2.5-story pink fire-breathing unicorn.
Yes. That kicks off at like 5 a.m. or something, doesn't it?
No, it goes. No. So we kick off probably when it gets dark, and then go all the way through to sunrise. So it goes for a good 12 hours nighttime. So the camp's always going. There's always something in the camp, but actually Charlie himself will move out of the camp and drive through and end up in the middle of the playa. And
Right in the badass back corners.
Yeah, by the
I
trash
remember.
fence.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the unicorn horn breathes fire.
The
I remember
dark depths of the playa.
it's remote control. So one of my buddies who lives here now, he's an American, but he lives here in Manly. He randomly came and found me. He woke me up one day in my yurt, and I just couldn't. I was like, wow, this is amazing. One of my dear friends from Sydney, I didn't even know was coming. He's found my camp. He's found me. Anyway, we went out that night on Charlie, and I've got the remote control for the fire breathing bit.
Yeah.
And I'm pressing it, and the fire's coming out, and he was just like, oh, blown away.
It's a very, very good fun thing to do.
Oh yeah, it is. It's like, and it cheapens it to say it's Disneyland for adults, because it's not that. But I'd like to say it's kind of what the world should be, right? Like, it's fun, it's playful, it's free, it's liberating and liberated. It has 10 principles. It's not just lawless free for all. There's 10 principles on which Burning Man is founded, which includes gifting, civic responsibility, communal effort, leaving no trace. And then you've got radical self-reliance and radical self-expression. And it's like really, really lovely principles on which to base anything, right?
Yeah.
There's some responsibility in there. There's pull your weight. There's be good to other people. There's be generous. There's you can be anyone you want. You can wear anything you want. There's none of this identity politics. There's nothing. It's freedom. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think the world, if it was like permanently that way, could be quite unproductive.
And yet, would it really matter? People would be happy.
It would be great to have access to that all year round.
Yeah.
There are times in my life where I've worked hard and I feel like I want to just stop, and I want to just go and just get on it, like go hard and just get deep into the music. Like, it's such a tribal experience to be in front of the Mayhem Warrior or the Robot Heart with some of your best buddies, and everyone's dressed to the nines and everyone's just going for it, and you just close your eyes. For me, I close my eyes and I just disappear and I become the music, and like, that is serious therapy for me. That is seriously spiritual stuff. And there are times throughout the year where I really feel like it. In fact, I would be more than happy to go and do a festival of some description this weekend. It doesn't have to be Burning Man, but it has to be generally has to be a festival week and really get into it for a few days.
Yeah, and if I can say on that, it's also, to clarify, it's not about drugs or alcohol at all. It's about having, and you said that it's a tribal experience where you can connect with the music, and that's something that actually, this is a bit of a tangent, but something that really upsets me about Sydney, because in the UK, there's so much music in the UK, and music has always been a real passion of mine, whether it's concerts or festivals or clubs or gigs or whatever. I've been lucky enough to go to thousands of gigs and clubs all over the place, and something that really upsets me here in Sydney is that there isn't that opportunity. The festivals here are so commercialised and so policed and so regimented, and so there is none of that tribal connection bit.
Sure.
You're always aware of these idiots around you who, whether it's the overzealous security guards or the police presence, whether or not you're doing anything wrong, that's a negative energy, Yeah. And so to have a festival like Burning Man, look, you don't just, it's not just lawless. There is a governance at Burning Man, but you are aware.
There's a social law.
Yeah.
It's like, don't be a dick.
For sure.
And if you just basically there's no one to stop. If you're climbing something and you fall off, you're fucked.
For sure. Yeah.
And so therefore, if you're not in the state to climb, don't climb. Yeah. There's no security guard's going to stop you. You're just going to pay a serious price.
You're responsible for yourself.
You screw it up.
Radical self-responsibility.
That's what it's like when I was growing up in New Zealand, little boy. There was 4 boys. We used to go out into the bush. We used to disappear for like the day, maybe staying a couple of nights up. We would just make our own little bivouacs and stuff. We didn't, you can't be stupid and irresponsible because you're screwed. There's no people to come and save you, and I don't think kids get enough of that anymore. Like, they literally don't know their boundaries.
Yep.
Because they're always being prevented from pushing them. And I think, that's a nice segue. Let's get back to the boundaries stuff, man.
Sure.
Because I want to talk about that leap thing, how you leapt from one job to the other, and how you backed yourself. But before we
do, I've got one other tangent, because this is about boundaries. Again, Sydney is, if you like, it's a city of laws and regulations. I was at a Motley Crue gig about 2 years ago here in Sydney, right? And Motley Crue, for anyone that's too young to know, they were the most lawless, outrageous. They were outlaws of rock and roll back in the 80s, right? And they, read their book. It's extraordinary the stuff they did. It was. Yeah, me too. It was all bad. Anyway, so they are these legends of rock and roll, and they're just known for just outrageous behaviour. I was at their last ever world tour, right, 2 years ago here in Sydney, the last ever world tour. Me and my buddy were about 5, dancing around in the mosh, well, there isn't a mosh pit, but, we're in the standing area, about 5 rows from the front. So right at the front of this crazy gig, it's supposed to be a crazy gig, and then the security guard sort of barrels his way in and grabs a girl that's next to us, been jumping around, pulls her out. 10 minutes later, she comes back in, and me and my buddy said, "What was that about?" She said, "You won't believe it. He's just told me we have to stop jumping up and down." That's it. This is a Motley Crue gig, right? We're in the standing area. It's a rock and roll band that used to be the most legendary outlaws of music ever. And we got told by a Sydney security guard to stop jumping up and down.
Preposterous behaviour. How dare you?
Boundaries.
Wow. Yeah, man.
So, yeah, being able to find somewhere to get really tribal. Actually, on a spiritual retreat I had a few weeks ago, again, another one out in the bush, we were playing drums in a way that was really, really, that was a deep connection. There were about 11 or 12 of us in a circle, and there was no script, there was no music written down anywhere. We were just playing, and then the beat picked us up and carried us along, and that was something truly spiritual. That was a connection to something primal. And that's what I think we're missing by living in cities and having all of this inability to get out into the wilderness. You go out in the wilderness and someone tells you, no, you can't build a fire, or no, you can't park there, or no, you can't sleep in your van. It's like, come on, bro. Where is the freedom gone? That's what I'm yearning for. And that's why Burning Man for me 2 years ago was so extraordinary, because it was freedom. And as you said, looking after yourself and your friends and and others, but no one's telling you what to do for an entire 10 days. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm very excited about going. Just got to get some tickets. Anyone hook me up? I'll give you, I don't know, some help with something that you probably need help with. I can help you with some cool stuff. Guys, that finance stuff that we talked about before, it's a pretty sweet little process. It takes probably about 3 hours. You've got to fill out an Excel sheet, and then I'll sit with you and help you open a few bank accounts. It's $200, and you will end up with far, far more than $200 within a year. It will actually help you to actually save some of your money instead of just save and then spend it. Because most people, most people, and I hate to give this away without being with somebody, but if I could hear you out there and I ask you this question, I know what your answer is going to be. When you're saving and you're doing well in your job and whatever it is and your life's going well and you're saving and you're saving and you're saving, you get to a point where your bank account hits a certain amount. And then whether you deliberately do it or not, there's this feeling of security that comes from this certain amount. And then you change your job, you break up with your partner, you move house, you decide to go on holiday, whatever it might be. And then before you know it, that money's spent again. And then you come back into the work environment and then you save again. And then you get to a certain amount. You get to this magic number, seems to be about 90% of the people I work with, if not more. They get to this magic number and then they break up with their partner, they move house, they change their job, and they go on travel.
Bank account again, haven't you?
And then it goes down again. And the price of the consequence of that is it feels good when you've got that amount in the bank and then it goes again. And then at the end of the day, you've got zero, right? So what I do is help you to halve that so that you keep some and spend some, and you have to spend some. And there's a whole lot of psychology around it, and it's a system that really works. Can anyone guess what that number might be? There's only one other voice in the studio. What do you think that number might be?
No, go on.
$10,000.
Yep.
Is that what you're going to say?
Pretty much, yeah.
$10,000.
Yep.
Pretty much every person I speak to, they have this magic figure of 10. And I've done it a number of times. That's the irony, is that I actually did it myself before I set up this system. Guys, I'm going to put on a bit of a track. We'll come back in a little flash. In the meantime, go and do something brave. Take advantage of this this insight from Mr. Jonathan Leeming. Not Lemming, it's Leeming. I got corrected.
After 2 years,
I got social slaps. It's like, I'm not a little animal that jumps off a cliff, bro. It's Leeming. I'm leaning towards the right name. All right. See you in just a minute.
I am literally fundamentally unmotivated if I don't need to get out of bed. And so because I've done so much, and I guess feel like, well, as I shared with you earlier, the two crazy passions I had in life. Scuba diving. I was a master scuba diver. I had 9 dive certifications, hundreds of dives, and solo skydiving. I did lots of that as well. And both of those have been taken away from me now because I got an ear injury during a scuba dive, which is kind of...
And that's irreparable, or what?
Yeah, because it's an inner ear injury, an inner ear barotrauma. So the ENT specialist I saw up on the North Shore, who's also himself a master scuba diver, he said, look, if I were you, I wouldn't dive again because you risk making your hearing loss and your tinnitus much worse or losing your balance completely.
What about if you just stay within 18 meters?
No, because actually the majority of ear problems, ear injuries, actually get caused between 1 and 4 meters. That's when the greatest pressure differential is. So, short version is, having done all this crazy stuff, I now, and having got this purpose-filled job, as I said earlier, I think it kind of lets me off the hook a little bit, so I feel like I don't have to do anything with the rest of my life. So if I was to be an entrepreneur running my own business, look, I'd have to find something that really drove me, and as yet, having a job with purpose where I have to go to the office most of the time and show up and see my awesome colleagues and actually get stuck in, it makes me get up, you know? So I think, could I run my own business? The jury's out on that one.
Sure. Well, I tell you what, you would make a great partner. Because quite often, there's a really good book called Rocket Fuel, when it talks about the best partnerships in businesses. It's written by a guy who's a venture capitalist, so his job is to assess whether a business has legs or not. And he reckons the best mixture is a visionary who's the front line kind of talking and creating, maybe inventing the stuff and creating the products or the services or whatever it might be. And then somebody who actually does the backbone, the actual work, who can do the marketing, who can build relationships and maintain relationships. Not build, but mostly maintain, because in theory, the visionary person is going to be out there sort of stimulating the connections and so on. But they always need, not always, but they generally benefit from having somebody who knows how to do the back end, to do the admin, to oversee the structural side of things and the day-to-day running, because usually a visionary is terrible at that.
If I can analogize that with the Hindu religion, right? They got hundreds of gods, but 3 main ones. You got, I'll get this wrong, but you got Krishna, the creator, Vishnu, the destroyer. Anyway, you got a creator, a maintainer, and a destroyer. And often comedians take the mick out of the one in the middle, the maintainer, because it's the boring job. But if you think that I reckon I'm a combination of the maintainer and the destroyer, because I've got a self-sabotage bone in me, and it's quite easy for me to do things fabulously, and then when they're going great, like the saving $10,000 thing, and then splurge it all, I've got a great ability to just go,
Yeah, but you know what? It's really interesting, because a visionary is going to create too many products. So you need a destroyer to be like, you know what? let's stick to one. Let's stick to one Stacy, one Stacy, one Stacy. And I just keep like creating all these new things, which just creates distractions, you know. And for someone to be extremely good at one thing, they should really be focused. If someone wants to be the best violinist in the world, they don't spend their time practicing piano and guitar.
That's a really
they
good.
just do violin. And so the Destroyer has a very important role in that visionary entrepreneur sort of context.
Oh, thanks. I
and
feel better about it now.
Oh, dude, massive asset for somebody who, you know, if you find someone who is doing what you want to do, but you don't believe that you have that self-drive to do it, then tie on with somebody like that, because you make an awesome team.
Well, I think, and that's, I mean, CEOs, right? Like our CEO at Suicide Prevention Australia, actually, she's now stepped down and taken up a new role within the organisation, research fund director. But she's, amazing. And she would say herself, I mean, she says she's not a details person, and so she surrounds herself with people that can do all the jobs, all the functions. I said to her a while ago, we were on the way back from a meeting, and I said, "Oh, it's extraordinary. You've got such great people all doing amazingly at their particular thing." She said, "Why do you think that is?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "Really?" I said, "Oh, because you employed them all." She went, "Yeah, I surround myself with people that can do the things that I can't do."
Yeah, you betcha.
And I think that's that's a good CEO. A lot of CEOs out there are sociopathic, you know, but when you got a good CEO, particularly maybe small to medium-sized organizations. So talking about the whole ability to move, you were talking about me moving from big corporate to small organization, not-for-profit. I think one of the key questions they actually asked me in the interview process was, how do you feel you would cope working in a small organization? You don't have teams do things for you. We're all, you know, the acting CEO goes and collects the mail, for example. You know, it's like we all muck in. And I'm very lucky that actually a few years ago, between working for 4 big media organizations, a few years ago here in Sydney, I worked for a small digital media company. And that gave me some of that experience. So I was able to roll that out in my interview process for SPA and say, well, I've done that and I was okay at that. And so I think you've got to figure out, because when you were saying earlier, some people are better working for organizations, you've got to figure out, do you want to work at a small organization or a large organization? And some people would hate one and not the other, and vice versa, right? But I think it's not all that common, I don't think, to be someone that can happily be within either or both, you know, because it's a very different skill set.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I suppose with the more people, the more specialized the task is, and so therefore the smaller the responsibility in theory. So, and you can or less self-starter is required, because you need to, in a smaller organization, you're going to have a wider scope of not only skills but perception.
Also, you can't hide in a small organization, and dare I say, in large organizations, there's a hell of a lot of people I've known over the years that are kind of just...
They do the bare minimum so they get the paycheck.
Yeah.
They're actually less than that. They do the bare minimum so they don't get fired.
Touche, exactly that.
Yeah.
And they often say, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said once, people often get promoted to the highest level of their incompetency. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what the worst thing about that is? Is that you have kind of idiots in charge of smart people. Mm-hmm. And those smart people just have a shiz of time trying to fit in there.
You've got amazing salespeople, for example. That's a good example. Amazing salespeople, and they get promoted to a sales manager. They've never managed people before. They don't know how to manage and how to lead and how to coach.
They might have some sales figures under their belt, but...
And now they're no longer selling because they're managing a team internally. So so you've lost the ability to have that gun salesperson.
Very different skill set.
Yeah.
In fact, potentially, depending on the thing that they're selling, possibly the absolute opposite. Because if they're selling something that's not necessarily good for people, or if it's not necessarily the best product on the market, or whatever it might be, and they were convincing people immorally and being a great salesperson and you know, getting the figures done, but not necessarily caring about the people they were selling to, you hear me? Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden they have to switch to a role where they're a people manager, where the only way you can be good at that is to actually care about the people that you're managing, right? So you go from this role where you're very successful at just jipping people. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, you're in a job where you're supposed to care about people, and it's a 100% flip. You know, it's like how are you supposed to leverage that? How are you supposed to succeed at that?
And that's an empathy thing, right? Like empathy. I've always, funnily enough, on my resume, my CV, and on my LinkedIn profile, I've always one of the first words is deeply empathetic professional. And people have gone, well, why have you got that there? That's weird. But no, because I think empathy is so important. You know, without empathy, we can't put ourselves in the shoes of other people. We can't understand what other people are going through, and we're we lose our humanity. Without empathy is what I believe empathy is hugely important. A problem with empathy is if you get too empathetic with people, you can feel their pain and you can, end up wallowing in the mire of it yourself. And I feel that's actually part of why sometimes I get a bit depressed, because I look at the whole state of the world and I go, oh my God, there's war there, there's environmental destruction there, there's catastrophe there, there's corruption there, there's Donald Trump over there. I think, oh my God, the world is in such a mess. I can't do anything about it. Depression.
Sure.
And that's the problem, is having a decent chunk of empathy, but also being able to disconnect healthily. So healthy boundaries, which you mentioned earlier, I think, boundaries.
Yeah, interesting. So how do you facilitate that in your role? Because you're in a pretty serious environment.
Yeah, and that's a good question, good segue. But what's interesting, so SPA, Suicide Prevention Australia, we're not a frontline crisis line or service provider. We're the peak body. So if you like, our role is much more around policy and advocacy, advocating with government for example, the National Suicide Prevention Research Fund that got announced by federal government last June was off the back of years of advocacy from us, to say, as an organisation, saying on behalf of the sector. So we're a membership-based organisation. Organisations like Black Dog, Beyond Blue, Movember, Lifeline, Are You OK? They're all members of us, and they look to us to advocate on their behalf with government for
improved a few of those people.
Improved policy settings, better funding environment, etc., etc. And so we will coordinate. The FedGov announced last year the creation of this research fund, and they appointed us as the administrators or the managers of that fund. As I mentioned, my role was created to then ensure the financial sustainability of that fund when government funding, if government funding stops, but irrespective, just to make sure that fund carries on growing, so we can continue to make sure that research into suicide prevention is allocated in the right way, it's spent in the right way, so that we're doing the best we can and the most effectively with the money, the research dollars in the sector. So back to the point. Hang on, I've lost it. What was the question?
Mate, you've got me thinking all over the place.
Yeah, me too.
It's really cool. How do you facilitate? How do you
empathy.
stay?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, maybe I already phrased that question. How do you stay joyful? How do you keep your personal life insulated from the potential? My layman's perspective is like you're surrounded by all this, like, oh my God, kind of vibe. Like, is it? It's probably not like that, but
no, that's a really.
Do you have to be conscious of how you how do you shield yourself?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Thank you. I'm glad you recalled what it was. So, we've got a fabulous team, and we're a small team. There's less than 10 of us. We're a really supportive team, and on the odd occasion we do get a crisis call. Someone rings us because they found our name and number online. It doesn't often happen, but when we do, whoever takes the call, because we all pick up the same number, we will all rally around them and support them, during and after. But in terms of the general environment, it's really tough. There's nearly 3,000 deaths by suicide in Australia alone every year, right? That equates to about 8 a day, and that can just become a number, because we're working on back-end policy and advocacy and logistical stuff. And when you actually realise, like, I got an envelope last week which had $100 in cash and a donation slip, and it was in memoriam of a young man who died months ago. I remember because I was asked by the family of this guy to send them 300 donation slips and donation envelopes, because it was going to be a big funeral. And this is about 6 months ago, I think. And yet last week I got this donation slip on my desk, and it really just reminded me what we're doing and why we're doing it. Is this is the family of someone who's died by suicide, taken his own life at a young age, and it's like it does really give me an emotional, hits me. And so how to protect that? It's all individual, right? But as I said, very supportive team, making sure that we ask the right questions. We are. I personally feel like I know I'm doing good. I know that I am contributing towards something that is helping people to live, and that's one of our kind of monikers. Is that we work with governments, our members, communities, local businesses, individuals, to support more people to live, to meaningfully reduce the number of deaths by suicide that take place each year, and to help people to develop communities that know how to give help and ask for help. And so I know that because I know that I'm contributing towards that goal, I kind of feel okay about the fact I'm surrounded by this awful thing, because people can ring me, or people that when I say, if people ask me where I work and I say Suicide Prevention Australia, some people go, and then kind of essentially walk out the room. Other people go, wow, that's really important work. And whenever I hear that, I think, gosh, it is, isn't it? And it reminds me to give my all to the job.
Cool. That reminds me of one of my favorite little. Actually, it came to me on a similar weekend. Jonathan. I was asking the question, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? And the message that I got was, my purpose in life is to create as much joy as possible with the tools I have at hand.
Yeah, you shared that with me before.
Right?
That's really powerful.
And so in your role, you have all this wealth of knowledge from your previous career, and you're now literally, you're creating joy with the tools you have. You know, you've identified your skill set, these are your tools, and to create as much joy as possible with the tools you have at hand. So, you know, you're doing it. Well, it's in a different way, because you're preventing sadness, so therefore you're creating joy. It's funny, because if you succeed, no one knows. You know what I mean?
Well,
nobody will notice.
Ideally, we would like to be able to. So our vision, and this sounds a bit corny, because everyone, you know, if you work in cancer, your vision's a world without cancer. If you work in suicide, our vision's a world without suicide. But our vision really does mean that ideally we want to do ourselves out of a job. We don't want there to have to be a suicide prevention sector.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. But you know, there's a huge amount of work to be done. You know, the figures are, you know, they dipped a little bit in the last year, for which we have statistics, but they're usually pretty much the same. Roughly 3,000 people a year in Australia, which is a huge number, right?
Yeah, sure is.
And yet a big part of it is suicide is still very stigmatized. You know, there's people struggle to talk about it. They go, oh my God, you can't talk about it. You know, and yet we know that actually asking people, if you're in the middle of a conversation, you feel like someone could be suicidal, having suicidal thoughts, first thing, well, one of the things you do when it feels appropriate is to say, hey, sometimes people who say the things you've been saying are thinking about taking their own lives. Are you thinking about suicide? You actually use the S word. People go, oh my God, I couldn't say that, because what if it puts their thought in their mind? You can't. If they're not already having thoughts, it's like you support the Rabbitohs, and I say, tomorrow I want you to start supporting the Roosters. You'd be like, no, bro, that's not going to happen. I say, no, but I really want you to. Well, that's not going to happen. It does not happen that way. If someone's not already thinking about suicide, you can't put the thought in their head. But if they are thinking about it and you ask them, that opens the door for them to have a conversation, and that can help.
That's really interesting, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's good. Mate, I want to turn it up a little bit, change it around. I want to ask you, so how long have you been in this new role?
Since August last year.
August last year. So
8, 9 months?
8, 9 months, okay. So you've clearly, you believe that you've made the right switch, right?
For sure.
And you feel better about your life and who you are and what you're doing and your future and your contribution and so on and so on. So living in Potts Point and working in your office is in the city?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So you live in Potts Point. Your office in Potts Point, by the way, is a pretty central, somewhat CBD kind of suburb. I would assume that a lot of the people you spend your time with probably haven't backed themselves, or probably haven't really aligned their values or their career with their values and so on. Do you proactively have this, now that you've seen the light and taken action and actually done that switch, do you find yourself a bit of an advocate for the concept? And if so, how do you pitch?
There's a few angles within that. Yeah, I mean,
do you try to help people? Are you do you find that you're inspired to encourage people to reassess where they're putting the best years of their life? I just might say that one more time. To reassess where they are investing and to which entity they are contributing the best years of their life. What are they building? Regardless of what they're getting paid, their efforts are going towards a machine, an entity of some description. And if they haven't really thought about the consequential footprint of their time, energy, effort, money, sleep, food, every damn thing they do, that they give all of that to their company that they work for, do you help them to maybe look at it a different way?
It's a really good question. And I mean, it reminds me of that old, it's not I don't know what it is, but it's that old adage, if you like, that people often will work really, really hard, give up all their lives waiting for their retirement, but then they will die just after retiring.
3 years.
And that's not good enough,
3 years after retirement.
So
50%. 50% of people die around 3 years after retirement.
So the clue is don't retire. No.
That needs to be written on the bloody train wall, for God's sake. People don't get it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm working now so that I can do it later. Oh.
No, absolutely not. That's such a key thing. I think that's why you and I connected so well, whenever it was years ago, because you've got it. And I think that idea that people are contributing the best years of their life, their energy, their time, their emotion, their enthusiasm, everything of themselves, to things that they maybe don't care about. Back to my example from my previous corporate, where people were wishing their lives away, literally. It's not good enough. And it's an interesting thing when you ask, am I trying to encourage people to do more with their lives. It's tough, right? Because I don't want to be this. I'm not a martyr. What's the word? I don't. I'm really aware that I can become very evangelical when it comes to things I believe in. You know, I'm like, I because I have so much passion, and because I believe so deeply in whatever it may be, I want to encourage people to do similarly, which is usually be better. And that can come across really annoying, really patronizing, really condescending, and people don't want to be evangelized to. And so I guess it's an interesting juxtaposition, it's an interesting balance. And actually I noticed I've had a few meetings with friends, and I'll keep it abstract. I've had a few meetings with friends in the very recent weeks where I've started to think, gosh, there's a real disconnect here between what these friends are talking about, what they're focusing on, which is usually money and, you know, things and materialism, and what I believe is important and what I want to focus on. And it actually came up I had a nice long Skype conversation with my lovely mother yesterday, and we were talking about this whole idea of, you know, living in the city, surrounding ourselves with stuff that's not making us happy. And I'm, as I said to you earlier, I may have to move out of the city because of, you know, if I want to buy somewhere, finances, who knows. And she's saying, well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, look, yes, you would probably see less of your current friends, but maybe you would develop a new group of more grounded friends.
You absolutely would.
And I know that most of my, if you like, my spirit tribe, the people with whom I do these wonderful spiritual retreats occasionally, live up on Central Coast or, you know, Blue Mountains or Bush, you know, and it's a case of, well, they're beautiful people with whom I'd love to spend more time. And look, if I definitely can't afford to come live in Bondi and hang out with you and Jay, etc., you know, more, then maybe it is a case of, you know, just allowing myself to, if it naturally occurs, disconnect more from some of those. So thinking about your listeners here, right? I think if you find yourself spending time with people that don't inspire you, that don't motivate you, and you're just with them because
that's how it's always been, man.
Because it's
that's just me. That's who I am.
The default behaviour. Then look, disconnect. I have actively disconnected myself from a few friends over the years, and it's been tough. It's been when I go, look, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be friends with you anymore. That's a really tough thing to say, but in the long run, it's like I'm trying to think of an analogy. I suppose it's like, I can't think of an analogy, but it's just a really important thing to do, right? Is if you are finding yourself spending time with people that are just a drain on your emotional energy, your mental resources, whatever, then disconnect from them, because you need to create a new group. And that's what I'm kind of feeling a little bit like at the moment. You know, some of my friends will always be my friends because they're beautiful, dear, wonderful people, and others, maybe it's friends of convenience.
I get you. So how do you attract your new tribe?
Well, I think you have to believe that you're authentic, by allowing your authentic self to come out and show, those people will be attracted to you.
Didn't you just say that would be evangelical and annoying and abrasive to the people that you currently hang out with?
No, it's a different thing. Because
that's what you said.
Yeah, no, because if I'm disconnecting, I know you're winding me up here, but if you're disconnecting from, if you're allowing a natural disconnect to come with people with whom you do not, you no longer resonate.
I get that. Like, that's the easy part. How do you attract the people that you do want to be around?
I think it'll happen naturally. I would like to believe it'll happen naturally.
Is there an action that you could possibly take? Could be one of those Burning Man principles. Could be.
Radical self-expression? Is
Oh,
that the one you're
wow,
thinking about?
What a great idea. How about you? Hey?
You just want me to wear a feathered hat all day, don't you?
Do you think that I try to be somebody else?
No.
Do you think that, do I care what other people think about me?
Of course not.
No, I don't, man. And subsequently, the only people that I hang out with are people who like me for who I am and what I say. There is no one in my life who doesn't know who I am, what I stand for. Not a single person. Every single person I meet, and a lot of people that I don't even know, they know what I stand for, who I am, what I talk about, probably what my limits are, what I'm crap at, and what I'm good at. And I tell people, and I say it on Facebook, I say it online, I say it in every meeting, I say it in every dinner, I say it with all my friends. I'm completely and utterly straightforward about who I am and what I believe in. And subsequently, the people that are in my life are there because they like that guy, right? And so, have a think about that. Maybe, dude, you're an interesting guy. You've done some epic shit with your life, And for you, like, I appreciate the when people do get a little bit evangelical, but I think the thing is, man, like you've got a very broad spectrum. You don't believe in one particular thing. Like what you've created, your belief and your perception, your point of view is very broad, and it covers a lot of stuff. Like you're pretty open.
Open's a good word. Often I get told, well, no, actually, often I identify as being very opinionated, and that's what can really turn people off. I know this.
Yeah, man. Can you imagine me trying to live in your world, like trying to live in the corporate world? I would be the most opinionated son of a bitch. I would be out of there in a flash. No one would employ me. You know, and that's totally fine by me, man. That's totally fine. Anyway, dude, like, you know, you can attract the crowd that you want by just opening up your heart and exposing yourself. And if the best means to do that for you is on Facebook or Instagram, then so be it. If maybe, you know, you ruffle some feathers by expressing yourself, then let those feathers be ruffled. There's a statistic that I've heard and that I embrace. 95% of the people in my life right now won't be there in 5 years. And if you think about all the people, like, it's very hard to really appreciate how many people are in my life right now, because I know who I have a regular breakfast with. I know who I live with. I know who I kind of work with and who my sort of, you know, current client base is and so on. Those are the people that I can clearly write in a list. But there are a lot of other people that are in my life right now, and 95% of all of the people there ain't going to be there in 5 years. And so, you know, let's say that 50% of them won't be there in 2.5 years, and so on and so on. And so therefore, like, it's an interesting process, and like, you know, there's a lot of people that out there that you know, shy away from being themselves, and because it's a little bit scary. And I think the subconscious, the programming that we have in there, is that we're built. Our hardwiring comes from a small village sort of environment, right? So if there's 150 people in an Amazonian village, or in the Congo, or in Africa, or whatever it might be, this village, if you go running through the fire pit, you know, when everyone's else is sitting around having their deer on toast or something, and you go running through with a flowery skirt on, and you're doing hula whirls and stuff like that, and you're supposed to be a dude, and like, you might never get to breed. You might never get to have the good meat anymore. You might never, like, there's a huge price to being a clown, or to being a little bit, you know, to ruffling those feathers if we're in that small environment. We're here 5 million people, you know. We're here, and there is enough people that will totally love that authentic expression. And, you know, that's the only kind of way to build a brand nowadays, because people can just see through it. The only way you build a brand is video content is key, and people can see, rehearse salesy shizer nowadays. And so there's only one simple way. Anyway, man, like, you know, you're a great dude. I'd love to see you rocking with some cool dudes and cool chicks, and I'm sure you are, like, but you know, that's what you were talking about, is like maybe holding back from really expressing yourself and so on. And
well, it's funny because as soon when I walked in here, before you turned the microphones on, you said to me, you want to see me dressing in burner gear, right? It's like, I can't do that, and yet, you know,
but you can't, but you can.
Friends of ours do, but
it's so funny, isn't it? It's like, it's just a choice. You know, it can happen in 1 hour. Yeah. You literally, and this is a process that I've wanted to do with some people that I've worked with. I actually have done it with a couple of people I've worked with in the past. We literally go into Westfield, I pimp him out in some clothes, and like these people that are, you know, I can see that they're being shy. They're not shy, they're being shy, right? Or they're being socially, holding themselves back socially. Like, it's a just deliberate action. It's not who I am, it's not who they are, it's not any kind of restricted thing, it's just a choice that they've made. So we go into Westfield, pimp him out in some crazy stuff, walk through Westfield for 20 minutes. And when people are looking at them and girls are looking at them and stuff, they're like, what have I been doing with my life? It's just like this experience. You can't come back from it. It's like, holy crap.
All right, we're going shopping.
The man, right? So my suggestion to anyone out there who's thinking about this, if you're a dude or a chick or whatever, like, get someone either of the opposite sex or someone who you know has style, who loves fashion, who loves the idea of shopping. Offer to buy them lunch and say, hey, look, I've got $500, I've got $300, or whatever it is. Can you pimp me out? I'm yours for the day. And you just got to, like, if it's 2 people, it's easy to put faith in that. You know, like, if you got 2 stylish girls, if you're a dude out there and you got 2 stylish girls, just say, look, I got $500. If I buy you lunch, can you just dress me up? And I'm just, like, it's going to be hard, but I'm going to say yes to everything, right? And when I first did that, they put me in skinny jeans. I was like, what the no way. Skinny jeans? Anyway, I haven't stopped wearing them, man.
I remember I did that years ago.
And everyone was like, hey, man, you look good. And I was like, far out. wow.
Yeah, it's a really good bit of advice. I did that years ago. I used to be cool. I lived in Ibiza, right? I used to be cool. I used to be trendy. I used to have the ripped jeans and the ripped t-shirts and a tie made of scraps of fabric that you wear loose with a skinny singlet club top. You know,
Sweet.
ridiculous. But I remember I had a girlfriend. She was super trendy. Again, this is probably nearly 20 years ago now. So. And she took me out and she got me a whole different wardrobe and it was awesome.
Yeah, right.
And I was really cool, and now I feel like I've become this kind of corporate, boring. You know, look, I'm wearing what's this?
We are a product of our environment, champ. We are a product of our environment, so you know you can look at it that way because it's very true. You know, if like in my world, I mean, I'm hanging out with Rachel Moore and her crew. Like, you know, I can't just wear normal clothes. Like today, I'm dressed pretty normal, but like if I go to some kind of Bondi event, like I've got to have some expression. It's just kind of, it's like a gift to my friends.
And maybe
like
that's why.
If I go out with my crew, put it this way, right? If I go out with my crew and I'm not like owning my shit, then I'm sort of doing a disservice to my boys. You know what I mean? Because the better us look as a group of 5, like if we go out and we all look cool, then it does everybody a favor. We put in effort. You know what I mean? It's interesting, huh? Play the part, do the act. You've been to Burning Man, you appreciate the value of putting on a costume and being the party, being the event, giving other people something to enjoy. You know, if you look really cool, then people look at you like, I've seen so many guys when I've been sort of dressed up by somebody who's a stylish person, they put me in some crazy shit. I walk down the street, I see guys checking me out, like they're not checking me out, they're like looking at my clothes being like, that's what you do. And I do that myself. When I'm down at the grassy knoll and there's some dude that's just like rocking it, I'm like, I gotta do that, I gotta do that. And it's true, you know.
But you say when you say you see someone and then you go, I've got to do that, then is that being authentic to yourself, or is that trying to be something or someone else?
Depends what life you want, bro. Do you want to be the dude in the room or what? Because it's a choice. It is a choice. You know, I'm just gonna. We've only got a little bit left, so I'm just gonna. There's one thing I said to this kid, right? I was someone. It was like a colleague or something, and she had a 13-year-old boy who was just changing to a new school. He was going to start in a week or so, and I was like, dude, just remember this: when you walk into that school, they don't know who you are, and everything you think you are right now is all optional. You can change the whole thing, but I've got one tip, one thing you should do from the first time you say hello to somebody. Shake hands like a surfy dude. You know, do that slap thing. Because they have no idea who you are and where you've been and what you stand for and who your friends are and all that sort of stuff. If you do the businessman shake, you get 1 box. If you do the cool guy shake where you bend your elbow and you do that popping thing, they're going to be like, man, this guy's cool. And there's nothing changed, just the handshake. You know, someone taught me that about 13 years ago. His name's Wayne Herricks, one of the coolest dudes in Bondi. And we were doing some promo work together, and he's like, no, do this, bro. And, you know, it changed my life. I was like, wow, you know, I'm cooler all of a sudden. Like, nothing changed, just the way I shook hands, man.
You chose to do something
like
differently.
If you look around out here, I tell you, every one of these surf lifesavers, or any one of these surfing dudes, or some guy that cruised past on a skateboard with cool clothes on, he's shaking hands like that. Straight up. And it's an assumption people make, and it works. So the clothes that we wear, it's like ownership. Like, I own my space. I'm prepared to wear what I'm wearing, and I don't care what anyone thinks, you know? And it's a really interesting sort of switch.
That is. Because, making a choice. And, you know, we're on a show now called Tuesday.
Choose the way you look. Choose what you stand for. Choose what you're going to do today.
Speaking about choosing... and
we've got 5 minutes left.
Speaking about choosing and pimping things out, can I promo one thing?
Please.
So,
of course.
A huge project that I'm running at the moment at my organisation, Suicide Prevention Australia, is a national community 24-hour treadmill challenge in support of suicide prevention, which is taking place at 276 Anytime Fitness gyms all across Australia. You do not have to be a member to take part. Anyone can take part. Simply, if you're interested in taking part, it's on Friday the 25th of May to Saturday 26th of May for 24 hours. Just go to treadtogether.org.au. You can find your local Anytime Fitness club that's participating. You can register, you can donate, you can get involved, you can find out more. treadtogether.org.au.
Cool. There's one of those in Bondi Junction on Ebley Street.
Yep, they're taking part. Yeah.
Anytime Fitness. Okay, cool. So what, the thing has to be spinning for 24 hours?
So so almost all the gyms have got the treadmills. So they've got between 1 and 6 treadmills each that are operating for that whole 24-hour period between 3 p.m. Friday 25th for 24 hours. And people can jump on board for as little as 15 minutes. That's the minimum time slot, or all the way up to 24 hours. So I know 3 people that are actually going to be walking on a treadmill for 24 hours solid.
I'm picturing a bicycle. Yeah, right.
No, treadmill.
Yeah,
so it's a treadmill trainer, hence Treads Together. So TREAD, treadtogether.org.au. And as I said, it's awesome. It's the second year of our partnership with Anytime Fitness. It was a beautiful event. It started 5 years ago. A group of guys in Maroubra who founded this event because they lost some friends to suicide, and they decided they didn't want to lose any more. So they started a community event that was in support of us as an organisation, and it was called the PPP for SPA, the Plebs, Pros and Personalities 24-Hour Treadmill Challenge for Suicide Prevention Australia. And that group of guys basically led to this huge event down in Maroubra. That led to 7 events across 3 states last May. And then that kind of inspired when Anytime Fitness was speaking to us as an organisation saying, we're going to support you. What can we do? We said, this is before I started, but we said, well, we've already got this wonderful community event that we are a beneficiary of. Do you want to do something similar? So the Anytime Fitness thing is kind of, it's evolved into a national 24-hour community treadmill event. So
very cool. Okay, good. Well, that's obviously a good cause to get involved in. And I just want to pull up something here because today is Tuesday and we've got 3 minutes to go. 5 years ago, a couple of dudes got together and they had this idea to run on a treadmill in respect of their friends and to raise awareness or whatever. Nowadays, it's in how many gyms?
276 and counting.
276. So I don't care how crazy you think your idea is. If today you have something in your head that you're thinking, you know what, I should do that. I should do that. Why am I not doing that? Well, you never know where it's going to go, and it's not going to happen unless you start it. So today is your day. It's a Tuesday, and I know you can't start things on Tuesdays. You can only start them on Mondays, right?
Nah.
So you have to wait another 6 days, and all the momentum's going to be gone. That's let's get rid of that idea, because that's not true. It's 1 o'clock, 1 in the afternoon on a sunny Tuesday. It's a perfect time to start your thing. Now, the way you start that is by putting a post on Facebook or sending someone an email, or literally right now, get the phone out, and that person who you know has either done it or could help you or would support you or knows the people that you need to meet, call them right now and say, hey, I've got this idea, can we go for coffee? It's a game changer, because that thing in your head could make a huge difference to people in the future. But as long as it stays in your head, it means nothing. In fact, it means worse than nothing, because you feel bad that you're not doing it. And I believe, and I'm sure Jonathan believes this too, our intuition is the universe or God or Allah or Buddha or something that's going on in this world where you are being told through an energetic thing that's coming through your heart, and it's a vibrational kind of feeling that you have. When you think about that idea, you get that thing that's happening is the free part of piece of energy. That is the universe giving you a boost charge. It's saying, boom, there you go, boom, there you go. And that, if you don't act on that, that will go to somebody else.
For sure.
And you'll go, and it'll dissipate. Maybe it'll haunt you or whatever. And when you're old, you'll be like, damn, I wish I did that. But that little piece of energy that you might be feeling right now, that is the universe giving you that free spark. It's that jumper boost. So pick up the phone right now and take action.
The first thought you have, exactly, is your intuition. If you have 2 thoughts about something, you have a second thought, go back to the first thought, because that is the universe, your intuition, the universe giving you energy.
Yeah, and then the stuff that I've created, it doesn't come through work most of the time. Like I work on the idea, but the idea comes to me in an inspired moment. It might be in the shower, it might be walking down the beach, it might be just some random thing, meditation, falling asleep, doing yoga, whatever it might be. That moment, that having that idea, that doesn't count for anything. It's taking action on the idea. And I've got some fantastic things going on in my life, and they were all born from those inspired ideas. But I'm like, oh wow, that's what I should do. But the reason my life is in such a state that it's good is because I actually make those calls when they hit me.
Because today is the first day of the rest of your life. So if you've got something to do it today, right?
Correctamundo. Perfect words to wrap it up on. Mr. Leeming.
Thanks, bro.
There's that bro shake. Exactamundo. Very cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've found something of inspiration. I hope you're not even listening to me and you're actually on the phone to that person, because today is Tuesday. is the day for you to make that choice. Get out there, do something. You know, your purpose in life is to create as much joy as possible with the tools you have at hand. So find out what your tools are. Figure out how much your life costs so you don't get stuck in the money vibe. And get out there and make something.
Choose
do
life.
something. Create.
Choose life. Choose the
Or you
day.
can just get a big TV and buy some junk food and do what everyone else is doing, but that doesn't really inspire. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you soon.
Look forward to it.
See you next Tuesday.